The irony still gets to me. I was at the conference to capture moments. Crisp, polished, PR-friendly snapsh *TS of people pretending to enjoy hors d'oeuvres and panel discussions. That's what I'd been hired for. Nothing glamorous. Just freelance work to pay off some credit card bills and keep my name in circulation. It was my third conference this year, and by now, I knew the rhythm of these events by heart. But nothing. Not the dozen dry speeches or the stale networking banter could have prepared me for the moment I looked through my lens and saw my wife in the frame, standing beside her company's director like she was part of his world and not mine. Started out like any other gig. I arrived at McCormick Place just before noon, camera bag slung over my shoulder, badge clipped to my collar. I was given a generic media pass, limited access, and a *T list from the event planner. Plenaries, brand booths, a few VIP lounge *TS if security allowed it. The usual. After a few hours of wandering through tech showcases and breakout sessions, I figured I'd try my luck with the VIP section early. The planner mentioned they needed some coverage in the lounge around 4:30 p.m. just after the main keynote. I figured I could beat the crowd, get a few clean *TS of the setup before it got too busy. Security was tight at the entrance. A woman in a black blazer checked my badge, raised an eyebrow, and told me it wasn't the right color. "You need the blue and silver access for the lounge," she said, not unkindly. "Media's usually not cleared. I'm supposed to be covering the VIP section for the closing," I said, showing her the email from the event coordinator. She looked it over, nodded skeptically, and motioned me in. 15 minutes. If someone questions you, point them to me. I gave her a grateful nod and stepped inside. The lounge looked like every other high-end conference suite I'd seen. Dim lighting, brushed steel fixtures, soft jazz humming from hidden speakers. It was designed to feel exclusive. A place where executives could talk shop over neat scotch while pretending the world outside didn't exist. I scanned the room, looking for angles, when a familiar figure caught my eye. Emma, my wife. At first, I didn't even recognize her. She was standing near the tall windows, bathed in soft afternoon light. Her hair pinned back in a way I'd never seen before, not at home at least. She wore a sleek navy blue dress, far more formal than what her role usually required, and a pair of heels I didn't recognize. I only realized it was her because of the way she touched her necklace, something she always did when she was nervous or thinking. But she didn't look nervous. She looked comfortable, laughing, leaning just slightly into a tall man in a tailored suit who stood far too close for it to mean nothing. He had one arm resting casually behind her back, not quite touching but close enough to suggest familiarity. The kind you don't build at morning staff meetings. His blazer, a light gray, expensive cut, was draped over her shoulders. His access badge matched hers exactly, blue and silver, marked with a platinum E, executive access. Mine was just white. I stood there frozen, one hand still resting on my camera. It was like watching a movie scene I didn't audition for, except I wasn't the lead. I wasn't even an extra. Just as I started to move closer, I felt a tap on my shoulder. "Sir," said a short woman in a headset, clipboard in hand. "This section is for executive badge holders only." I raised my own badge reflexively, but she didn't even glance at it. "Media's restricted unless explicitly approved. You'll need to step outside, please." Before I could speak, another voice chimed in. Smooth, warm, familiar. "He's with me, Emma." She walked over with a practiced smile and placed her hand on my chest like this was normal, like this made sense. "This is my husband," she added, glancing back at the staffer with a dismissive laugh. "He gets turned around in these venues all the time." I told him to meet me outside, but he wandered in. Didn't mean to cause any trouble. The staffer glanced between us, clearly unsure. I stood frozen. I hadn't even said a word. Emma squeezed my hand, subtle but tight. "Babe, why don't you go wait in the media lounge?" she said through gritted teeth, smiling the whole time. "I'll join you in 10. Just need to wrap up something with Mark." She didn't wait for me to answer. She turned back toward him. Mark Langford, I now remembered. She'd mentioned him a few times over dinner, always with a neutral tone. The director's been riding me all week. Mark's been pushing for Q4 numbers. Langford wants our team in early tomorrow. Never once did she mention that he was charming, or that his jacket smelled like cedarwood and whiskey. I left the lounge before I did something I'd regret. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't even ask who bought the dress. I found an empty hallway and sat down on a bench, my heart hammering against my ribs. The thing that stuck with me most wasn't the hand around her waist or the jacket on her shoulders. It wasn't even how close they stood. It was how effortlessly she redirected everything. How smoothly she turned me from a husband into an inconvenience. An intruder. She didn't blink. She didn't stutter. That's what scared me the most. I didn't confront her when we got home that night. She acted like nothing had happened. Said the conference was exhausting. That her feet were *ling her, and that she was glad it was over. When I asked about Mark, she blinked and said, "Oh yeah, he was there too. Didn't see much of him though." That lie hit harder than anything else. Clean, confident, like she'd rehearsed it. I didn't press. I just nodded. But that night, while she showered, I pulled out my camera and flipped through the *TS. I hadn't even realized it in the moment, but I'd taken one, just one, of her and Mark before the staffer interrupted me. They were mid-laugh, eyes locked, his fingers ghosting the small of her back. They weren't aware of anyone else in the room. They looked connected. *mate. I stared at the screen, jaw tight. Every part of me wanted to believe there was a good explanation. Maybe they were just close from work. Maybe it was a long week. Maybe the jacket was just convenience. But a voice in my head, quiet and sharp, whispered something I couldn't unhear. She didn't want to be seen with me in that moment. She was afraid I'd ruin the picture she was painting with him. And suddenly, the last few months started to take on a new shape. That night after the conference, I barely slept. Emma was out like a light the moment her head hit the pillow, or maybe she was pretending. I laid beside her in the dark, staring at the ceiling, reliving that moment in the VIP lounge on repeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's hand on her waist, his jacket around her shoulders, and the way she turned to me like I was an inconvenient reminder that her real life still existed outside those glass walls. But what gnawed at me more than the scene itself was the quiet click in my head, like something inside had snapped into alignment. All the things I'd dismissed over the last few months suddenly flooded in, demanding attention. I hadn't noticed them all at once. That's the thing about slow changes, they don't wave red flags, they whisper. And I'd been too tired, too trusting, too wrapped up in work to listen. It started maybe 6 months ago. At first, it was just longer work hours. More late nights at the office, she said. The first few times, I believed her. She worked in client management. Those roles are demanding, deadlines chaotic. But the frequency picked up. One late night a week turned into 2. Then 3. Then a few weekends. And every time I asked about it, she had an answer ready. The new rollout's a nightmare. Langford's holding us to impossible metrics. There's a merger in the works. Everything's tense. It sounded plausible. It always did. But the tension started showing in other ways. She'd come home tired but distant. Like her body was here, but her thoughts were somewhere else or with someone else. We used to talk about everything. Our days, our dreams, even dumb things like what kind of dog we might get one day. But our conversations shrank to summaries. Work was fine. I'm just tired. I don't feel like talking right now. At the time, I chalked it up to burnout. I tried to be supportive. I offered to cook more, pick up her dry cleaning, give her space. I thought I was being a good husband, patient, understanding. But now I wonder if that patience just gave her more room to hide things. Then came the dresses. I remember the first one because it still had the tag on it. A silky black cocktail dress from a boutique uptown. When I asked about it, she said her team was doing a formal networking dinner and there was a dress code. She never used to care about dress codes. She used to complain about them. But it wasn't just one dress. More started appearing, sleek, expensive pieces that didn't match the style I'd known her to wear. They showed up one by one, always with a new story. Oh, it was on sale. Got it with my work bonus. Everyone on the team's been upgrading their look. And then there were the shoes. Red bottom heels, the kind with a price tag that used to make her laugh. Now, they lined the back of her closet like they'd always belonged there. The gifts were another clue I hadn't wanted to see. New earrings, a designer handbag, a perfume bottle with a gold ribbon tied around the neck. She always waved them off. Client appreciation gift, a raffle prize at the holiday party, corporate perk, but none of it made sense. Her company never used to shower their employees like that, and she'd never liked showing off. Emma was always modest, practical, or at least she used to be. There was one moment that stood out more than the rest. A Tuesday night in March. She said she had a yoga workshop with a friend and would be home by 9. But at 9:15, I got a text saying she was staying for tea afterward. 10:30, she still wasn't back. I didn't think much of it until the next morning, when I passed by her work bag on the dining table. A receipt stuck out from the inner pocket. It was from a rooftop bar, one of those luxury spots near the river. 2 martinis, truffle fries, cheesecake, time-stamped at 8:57 p.m. I never brought it up. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to seem jealous or controlling. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. But part of me hoped there was a reason, any reason besides the one I feared. That same receipt still sits in my desk drawer, buried under a warranty envelope. I never threw it away. Other things followed. She started leaving her phone face down on the table. Always. At dinner, during movies, even in bed. She used to scroll mindlessly next to me, showing me memes or weird posts from her friends. But now, if a message came through, she'd press the power button before I could glance over. I asked her once why she always did that. She smiled and said, "I'm trying to be more present." That was a lie. She changed her phone's lock screen from a picture of us to a stock photo of the beach. Another time, I saw a calendar notification pop up while she was in the kitchen. It was labeled, Yoga, 7 p.m., but I could see it was synced with her work email. I remembered thinking that was strange. Why would a personal yoga session be on a corporate calendar? And why was it marked as private? It wasn't the first. I did a little scrolling through the shared iPad later that week. She must have forgotten it syncs her calendar too. There were 3 other entries over the past 2 months labeled yoga. All at 7 p.m. All on Thursdays. All the same location downtown. But there were no gym charges on our joint account. No yoga mats in the trunk. No new workout gear. Nothing to back up the story. Even stranger, there were corresponding Uber charges on her personal card. Rides to addresses that didn't match any yoga studio I could find. The deeper I looked, the more patterns I started to see. Uber pickups from our house that stopped at hotels or high-end lounges. All after 6 p.m. All during late meetings. Charges to her credit card for restaurants we'd never been to together. One of them billed as Langford's Table. I Googled it. Private dining for executive clients. Price fixed. Reservation only. Then there was the perfume tag I found in the trash, small, glossy, from a luxury brand I didn't recognize. When I held it up, Emma told me she got a free sample in a gift bag at work. I let it go. But now I remember the bottle on her dresser. She never said where it came from. I remember a voicemail she left on our landline. She didn't realize she'd called. Her voice in the background, laughing. And a man's voice, low, affectionate, almost teasing. Cut off before I could hear more. I never mentioned it to her. Why didn't I confront her back then? I ask myself that more than I should. Maybe I wanted to believe it was nothing. That Emma, my wife, my best friend, was just working hard. Maybe I didn't want to be the husband who accuses. The guy who thinks every smile means something more. I didn't want to be insecure. But after seeing her at that conference, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. This wasn't just a feeling. This was a pattern. A build-up. A slow, intentional drift, not caused by time, not caused by life, but by choices. Choices she made one by one. And I was finally ready to stop ignoring them. I didn't have to go looking for proof. It landed in my lap, like the universe had decided to stop giving me hints and start throwing bricks. It was 3 days after the conference. I'd been sitting at my desk, half working, half replaying everything I'd seen, when an email notification popped up on my laptop. The subject line read, "Event assets, auto upload completed." I almost ignored it. These conference systems were all the same. Photos, stock videos, press packets, nothing special. But then I remembered, Emma had been at the same conference. Her company was one of the sponsors. She had access to the VIP lounge. And my camera had been set to automatically upload images to our shared cloud folder as a backup. I clicked. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Folders labeled, Main Stage, Panel 3, Networking Area. I skimmed through a few **TS. Nothing unusual. Then I saw a folder called VIP Lounge, 4:37 p.m. I clicked it open. There she was. Emma, my wife. Not across a crowded lounge this time, but up close, crystal clear. The camera had been on burst mode without me realizing it, so it had captured a series of frames. 20 photos, one after another, like a silent movie. In the first, she and Mark Langford were standing near the window, side by side, his hand ghosting over the small of her back. In the second, she turned toward him, smiling. Not the polite corporate smile I'd seen 1,000 times, but the soft, private one she used to give me. In the third, his blazer was already around her shoulders. By the fifth, they were leaning in close, his forehead almost touching hers, her fingers brushing his lapel. And in the last, they were kissing. Not a quick, awkward peck. Not a drunken mistake. A real kiss. Slow, practiced, familiar. Her hand on his chest, his palm on her hip. The kind of closeness you don't stumble into. The kind you rehearse, the kind you build. I sat there staring at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. My first instinct was to close the folder. Pretend I hadn't seen it. But my hand moved on its own, scrolling further. Beneath the photos were 3 video files. I hesitated before clicking the first one. The thumbnail showed the VIP lounge, empty except for Emma and Mark. My camera must have been on video mode for a moment, recording without me noticing. I pressed play. The footage was short, maybe 40 seconds. But it was enough. Emma and Mark were standing in the corner, partially hidden behind a pillar. She was laughing at something he said, tilting her head back, her hand on his arm. He leaned in and whispered something in her ear. She reached up, touched his face, and then they kissed again. Longer this time. I stopped the video halfway through, my stomach twisting. It didn't matter what else was on it. The images were burned into my mind. I sat back, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe. All the excuses, all the late nights, all the yoga sessions. They weren't suspicions anymore. They were facts. When I finally looked back at the screen, I noticed another file in the folder. It wasn't mine. It was a zip file labeled execfloor_chat exports. Zip. My hands shook as I double-clicked it. A list of text files appeared, each named after dates, weeks, even months going back. I opened the most recent one. It was a chat log. Mark. VIP lounge cleared after 4. Bring the badge. Emma. Got it. You'll cover for me if anyone asks? Mark. Always. Same story as before. You're a natural at this. Emma. You're terrible. Mark. And you love it. Emma. See you soon. I felt my jaw clench. I scrolled further. Mark. Don't forget to use the executive elevator. Less chance of running into staff. Emma. I know. Already told John I'm on the main floor with clients. Mark. Perfect. Room 803 tonight? Emma. Yes, but only an hour. He's been suspicious lately. Mark. You're worth the risk. Emma. Stop. You'll make me blush. Mark. Good. I like it when you blush. The messages went on like that. Not just arrangements, but rehearsed cover stories. Little jokes about how gullible he was me. Even references to the gifts she'd brought home. The perfume. The dresses. All of it lined up. I opened another file, older. Same pattern. Meetings, excuses, hotel rooms, private floors. They weren't even careful anymore. They talked about me like I was an obstacle they had to plan around. I read until the words blurred. Each line was like a nail driven into the coffin of the life I thought I had. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was a system, a routine, a structured affair. I closed the folder and pushed back from the desk. My hands were trembling so badly I had to press them flat against my thighs to stop it. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the hum of the fridge in the next room, the distant sound of a train passing through the city. The apartment felt suddenly foreign, like I'd woken up somewhere else, in someone else's life. Emma was in the shower when I finally stood up. The sound of the water running was almost too normal, too domestic. She was humming some tune I didn't recognize. It made my stomach turn. I walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet. My mind was racing, but my body felt like lead. Part of me wanted to storm into the bathroom, throw the evidence at her feet, and demand answers. Another part of me, the quieter, colder part, told me to wait. I remembered the conference, the way she'd redirected me, the way she'd smiled at the staffer like I was a lost child she had to guide out of the room. She'd been so smooth, so confident. If I confronted her now, she'd just do it again. Twist the story. Make me doubt my own eyes. No, not this time. This time I needed to be smart. I needed to be deliberate. I turned off the laptop, slid it under the bed, and lay back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling. My heart was still pounding, but my thoughts were already shifting. Past the shock, past the anger, toward something steadier. This wasn't the end of the story. Not yet. But it was the moment everything changed. For the first time since the suspicion started, I didn't feel like a paranoid husband. I didn't feel like a man who might be overreacting. I felt like someone who had been lied to, used, and humiliated, and who finally had the truth in his hands. And the truth was power. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing. Emma wasn't going to see it coming. Not this time. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, I sat in the living room with nothing but the glow of my laptop screen and the ticking of the wall clock. My body felt heavy, like I'd run a marathon I didn't sign up for. But my mind was alive, electric. The shock had burned off, leaving behind something sharper, quieter. Not rage, not grief, focus. I'd seen enough to know the truth, but not enough to protect myself from what came next. Emma wasn't just cheating. She was planning around me, laughing about how easy it was to fool me. If I confronted her now, she'd spin it, twist it, maybe even destroy the evidence before I could act. I couldn't let that happen, so I started compiling. I opened a new folder on my hard drive and labeled it personal. Inside, I began dropping everything *TS of the photos from the conference, the video files, and the chat exports. I added the receipts I'd saved in my desk drawer, scanning them into PDFs. The rooftop bar, the truffle fries, the perfume tag, even the Uber charges I'd noticed but never questioned. Piece by piece, the puzzle became a picture. Next, I logged into our shared accounts, credit cards, bank statements, travel points. Emma had always been the organized one. She'd saved every confirmation email, every itinerary. It wasn't hard to trace her movements once I started looking. There were withdrawals from ATMs near hotels, charges from upscale restaurants she'd never mentioned, and even a few airline tickets I didn't recognize, short flights, in and out, always tied to client trips. For months, she'd been weaving this web right under my nose, and I'd been the supportive husband, nodding along to every excuse. Not anymore. I changed my passwords first, email, bank accounts, anything she might access by accident. I didn't want her knowing what I was doing. Then I set up a hidden backup drive that automatically copied everything I saved. If she tried to delete it, she'd fail. While the files uploaded, I pulled out her old laptop, the one she'd stopped using after her company upgraded her. It had been sitting in the hall closet for months, dusty but still functional. I plugged it in and waited. When it finally powered up, the screen glowed with a familiar background photo. Us at Navy Pier 2 summers ago. It was almost enough to make me shut it again. Almost. But then I remembered the chat logs. The way she'd written about me like an obstacle. The laptop was still synced to her old cloud accounts. Emails, notes, voice memos. All of it waiting there like she'd left a trail for me to follow. First, it was mundane. Grocery lists, calendar reminders, work presentations. Then I found a folder labeled audio. Dozens of voice notes. I clicked on one. Her voice filled the room. Soft. An asterisk mate. A tone she hadn't used with me in months. "Mark," she said. "I can't stop thinking about last night. I feel alive when I'm with you. I hate sneaking around, but I don't know how to stop. John suspects something. He's been asking questions." My stomach turned. I clicked another. This one was a list: safe meeting spots, private lounges, executive floor hotels, she said, laughing softly. "He never looks at the credit card statements. He's too trusting." Another note. "I told John the first had yoga tonight. You'll have the key ready, right?" I stopped listening. Couldn't. It was like pressing on a bruise to see how much it would hurt. I copied everything to my drive. Every voice note, every calendar entry, even the jokes. One file contained a list of fake excuses she could use if I asked about her location. Traffic jam, client dinner, team drinks. It was all there, written like some kind of game plan. I sat back, my hands trembling, and looked at the growing folder on my screen. This wasn't just evidence. It was a map of betrayal. When I'd gathered everything I could from the laptop, I started thinking about the next step. I needed someone who knew the legal terrain. Someone who could tell me how to use this without getting burned. The next morning, while Emma was still asleep, I left the apartment early. I didn't tell her where I was going. Downtown Chicago was gray and quiet, the early morning crowd moving like ghosts between high-rise buildings. I walked into a glass-walled law firm whose name I'd found the night before. A firm known for handling high-asset divorces. The kind of place where lawyers wore suits that cost more than my camera gear. The receptionist didn't blink when I gave my name. Within minutes, I was sitting in a conference room with a senior attorney. A woman with sharp eyes and a voice like steel. I told her everything. Not the emotional parts. The facts. The photos. The videos. The chat logs. The receipts. The voice notes. She listened without interrupting, her fingers tapping lightly on a legal pad. When I finished, she nodded once. "You have more than enough," she said. "This isn't speculation. This is documented misconduct. You can protect yourself and your assets. If you want a file, we can have the paperwork ready in days." Hearing her say it out loud made it real. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It wasn't just a folder of files on a hard drive. It was evidence. Proof. We discussed strategy, timing, financial protection, next steps. She explained how Illinois law handled infidelity, how property division could work, how to avoid giving Emma any chance to manipulate the process. By the time I left the building, the sun was higher, casting long shadows across the street. My stomach still churned, but I felt steadier, like I'd been stumbling through fog and had finally found the road. When I got home, Emma was in the kitchen making coffee, acting like nothing had changed. She smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Morning," she said, too brightly. "You're up early." "Yeah," I said, my voice even. "Had a meeting." She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask what for. She never did, not anymore. For the rest of the day I played along, smiled at her small talk, asked about her busy schedule, nodded when she said she might have to stay late. Inside I was stone. Outside I was calm. She thought she was keeping me in the dark. She didn't realize I'd already stepped out of the shadow. That night, after she went to bed, I opened my laptop again. The folder of evidence sat on the screen like a loaded G***N. I clicked it open, scrolling through the files slowly, methodically. Dates, times, **TS, receipts, metadata. Every detail was another brick in the wall I was building. Not to trap her, to protect myself. And as I sat there, alone in the quiet apartment, I realized something strange. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was ready. After that meeting with the attorney, something in me shifted. Not in a dramatic, movie-worthy way. It was quieter than that. a kind of internal lock clicking into place. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't wondering if I was crazy or paranoid or too sensitive. I was done doubting. Now I was planning. By the following week, the firm had assigned me a full legal team, a primary divorce attorney, a financial advisor, and a forensic accountant. It felt surreal, sitting in a polished glass office with a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, while people in suits casually dissected the anatomy of my marriage. But it was necessary. I needed to understand what I was walking into and how to walk out of it intact. They reviewed everything I brought, the folder of *TS, the audio files, the receipts, the chat exports, the hotel visits, the calendar entries. "You've done more prep than most clients ever do," my lawyer told me, flipping through the printed transcript of Emma's voice notes. "This is airtight. You're not just reacting emotionally, this is structured, documented deceit. It'll hold up." I wasn't proud of the evidence. I wasn't proud of having to gather it, or that it even existed. But I was grateful for it, because now I had leverage. Now, I could protect what I'd built, what she didn't deserve to tear apart without consequence. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted a clean cut, quiet, final. And to get there, I had to keep playing the role. So I did. At home, I became an actor, patient, smiling husband. I kept up the illusion she needed in order to let her guard down. She didn't suspect I'd seen the emails, or the hotel bookings, or the messages she thought were erased. I started keeping a journal, not emotional ramblings but timelines, names, logins, notations about which cloud services her devices were still connected to. I kept track of everything she said, every detail that might help later. Dinner with team on Tuesday, late-night Zoom on Thursday, client check-in Saturday morning. Each entry in that journal was like a receipt. She was unknowingly building my case for me, lie by lie. The strange part was how hard she was suddenly trying to act normal. One night, she made dinner, set the table, lit candles, even put on music. She called it a reset night, said she missed spending time together. I nodded and smiled through it all, chewing slow bites of chicken piccata while my mind ran circles around her charade. After dinner, she put on a movie. I sat beside her, our knees touching. She leaned her head on my shoulder halfway through, and for a moment, I almost felt the ghost of our old life, the comfort, the habit. But it passed quickly, drowned by the sound of Mark's voice from the audio files I'd listened to the night before. The fake laughter, the whispered promises, her calling me so easy to fool. No amount of candlelight could undo that. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek before leaving for a client breakfast. She was dressed in a sharp navy pantsuit I'd never seen before, hair done, heels clicking confidently against the tile. I watched her walk out the door and felt nothing. No pain, no love, just distance. Back in the apartment, I pulled up the shared calendar and checked the meeting time she'd mentioned. It was blank. Of course it was. I added another note to the journal. That afternoon, I met again with my legal team. We finalized my financial protection strategy, freezing joint lines of credit, separating my savings account, ensuring that any transfers would alert me immediately. I updated my will, revised my power of attorney. I even made copies of the house deed and car title, just in case she tried to play smart. "Don't confront her until we file," my attorney warned. "The moment you tip your hand, you lose control." So I kept quiet. I still made her coffee in the morning, still texted her silly memes in the afternoon, still asked, "How was your day?" when she came home. I didn't want to do any of it, but I did it anyway. She thought things were improving. I let her think that. I needed her comfortable, predictable. But behind the scenes, I was building an exit. I started moving my essentials to a storage unit downtown. Photography gear, personal documents, clothes, sentimental items. I told her I was reorganizing the office. She didn't question it. I guess she assumed I was still too distracted to notice the distance between us. One Friday night, she left again. This time for what she called a corporate happy hour. I waited 30 minutes, then checked the backup phone I'd hidden in my desk drawer. It had a GPS app synced to hers. She was nowhere near a bar. She was at a hotel near River North. Sweet level. Same one as before. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Instead, I updated my file. Screensh *T the GPS ping. Matched it to the billing address from her last charge. Added it to the timeline. Let her lie. I welcomed it. Every false word was a future advantage. Over the weekend, she became clingy. Made French toast. Suggested we take a weekend trip together soon. She even asked if I wanted to attend her company's spring gala next month. Everyone's bringing their partners, she said, pouring syrup over her plate. It'd be weird if I showed up alone. I raised an eyebrow. Isn't Mark going? She paused for a fraction of a second. Just a blink. But I saw it. Oh yeah, she said casually. But he usually brings his wife. He's kind of awkward about the whole social scene. His wife, right? I smiled, nodded. Sure, we can go. She seemed satisfied by that. I wasn't. But it gave me a date, a window to finalize my preparation. I added the gala to my calendar. Not because I intended to go, but because it would be poetic. The last event we'd attend as a married couple would be one where she had to pretend she wasn't cheating. In between all this, I kept up appearances with friends and family. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I didn't want gossip. I didn't want well-meaning advice. I wanted clarity. Emma, on the other hand, kept trying to paint a picture. She posted photos of us on social media again, old ones, from better years. A hike we'd done in Colorado. A beach *T from 3 summers ago. Throwback to simpler times. She captioned one. I could see the comments roll in. You two are the dream. Still my favorite couple. Relationship goals. I didn't like any of them. She noticed. Why didn't you react to the post I tagged you in? She asked that night. I shrugged. Didn't see it. She stared at me a beat too long. Then smiled. It's okay. You've just been really in your own world lately. I nodded. Lots on my plate. She nodded back and turned off the bedroom light. Neither of us touched the other that night. And that was the rhythm of our days. Quiet deceit running beneath a stage play of civility. On the surface, we were a couple rebuilding. In truth, I was sharp.